Hey y'all, today we have another awesome guest from the city of brotherly love, OJ Spivey. OJ, go ahead and tell the people about yourself for the people who aren't watching. I have a little ticker here with some information about you, but go ahead and tell the people who are just listening.
Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate you having me on. My name is OJ Spivey. I'm a writer for the Philly Tribune. I've also written for ESPN The Undefeated. I've also done radio here in the city of Philadelphia for WRD Radio, having a sports show there. I still make appearances every now and then, but my love of sports and just love of sports culture and everything else. And again, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this week we had Brandon Brooks retired. Awesome all-pro right guard. Amazing how in the recent years we've had great players, but we end up, a lot of these guys, they're getting out of the game 5 years, 6 years of dominance, and they're getting out for, obviously the compensation is helping. But what are your initial thoughts on Brandon Brooks, and what is his legacy in the city and with the team?
Well, yes, Brandon Brooks, he was a great player for this franchise, and his 6-7 seasons here, I know it was injury prone, couldn't get on the field these last couple of years, but he was on the field for that Super Bowl team. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler, and he's one of the best at his position. And we hate to see him go. We understand the grind of the NFL, injuries happen. Sometimes they take a toll, especially on bigger guys. But he was an All-Pro, a Pro Bowler, a 3-time Pro Bowler, and he's had a great career, and he'll always be beloved here in the city of Philadelphia. Not to mention being an advocate for mental health, which we're seeing more and more players being more brave and more open to talk about their struggles. Because after all, end of the day, these guys are still human beings, and it's great. It was great for him to be an advocate about that.
Absolutely, I really hope that. They have a lot of guys when you go to the stadium and see the games. A lot of times they'll have different people who come and sign jerseys. Obviously, he's going to be involved in that to that degree, but I think he should actually have a job on the team, maybe as a consultant or maybe an assistant O-line coach with Stoutland. I think keeping him in the realm. I think him embracing his struggles this season definitely probably made Lane Johnson more open to taking his time to be open.
Absolutely.
With that. So that's a great point that you make. That's a great point that you make. There's been some conversation about retirement of jerseys this week, and it's always an interesting thought for me. What do you think in general? Obviously, bringing this up in the context of Brandon Brooks maybe having his jersey retired. What do you think is the threshold to say reasonably nobody else should wear the number for the team?
Well, I think it's a case. It's always a case by case basis as far as retired numbers is concerned. The first criteria usually for teams, and again, teams are different with how they do this. First criteria for most teams is, okay, is he a eventual Hall of Famer? Is he a Hall of Fame player? But that's not necessarily what the Eagles do. They do have a couple guys up in the rafters where they're not Hall of Famers. Most of them are. Jerome Brown comes to mind, but we all know his story, his career being shortened by a tragic car accident. But it's going to be kind of tough, I think, with Brandon Brooks because he did not play all that long for the Eagles. They may end up doing it anyway. But if he was able to stay healthy, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't retire his number. But I think it's kind of tough because he didn't play all that long enough. We got to look back at the statistics, look back at the longevity of it all. How many times did he go to the Pro Bowl? How many times was he an All-Pro? And, and what do the Eagles organization think of him as an all-time Eagle? So with that right there, that may get him over the hump. We'll see.
Yeah, and he split his career because he started with the Texans, was a very good player over there. But it's in total, it's still only 10 seasons. So I do think I think there's some numbers that are kind of unofficially retired, but they haven't done the ceremony yet. Like I haven't seen anybody wear 20 in recent memory. I haven't seen anybody wear 36. I guess Ajayi did get to wear 36.
Well, 20 is retired. 20 is retired
20 is
for
retired.
Dolphins. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
awesome.
They did that around, oh gosh, maybe it was before the Super Bowl, probably about 8 years ago. Yes,
actually,
so it
I
is
have it.
retired. Yes,
Yeah,
it is retired.
yeah. Well, they did his retirement ceremony, but then they retired the number. Okay, I wasn't aware
Yes.
of that. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
they
awesome.
actually did. Yes.
Okay.
And this was before Dawkins even went to the Hall of Fame. But to answer your question, the one number that comes to my mind is number 12, and I believe that should be retired for Randall Cunningham. Not so much that he's necessarily Hall of Famer. Some may argue that he is. I do believe that he should be in the Hall of Fame, but I definitely think his number should be retired by the Eagles. And I know he wears a number of a quarterback, and you can't have so many numbers to choose from as a quarterback.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the Eagles have not issued the number 12 since Randall retired, and that says a lot about him. And I do think that his number should be retired just because number one, he was a game changer. He was a pioneer. He changed the way the quarterback position was played, being a pioneer of that. And nowadays we don't see a Michael Vick, we don't see a Lamar Jackson, and maybe hopefully someone like a Jalen Hurts. We don't see those type of quarterbacks if it wasn't for Randall Cunningham, who did that at a time where it really was looked down upon as far as quote unquote running quarterback.
So you bring up the elephant in the room, Mr. Jalen Hurts, somebody who I've been supportive of us continuing to be patient and ride with him. Do you think after watching last week's action, that amazing football we watched, do you think that Jalen will get to a point where he's like a superstar, not a good quarterback, but somebody who is the reason you look back on a game and say Jalen Hurts took over that game? Do you think that he has that kind of potential, or is his ceiling short of that?
Well, I think if we look back at a couple of the games that the Eagles won this year, he did take over the game. I mean, for example, you look back at that Saints game where most of the country saw that day on that Sunday afternoon. The Eagles had a good lead. They almost relinquished it because they kind of took their foot off the gas, both offensively and defensively. And when they needed a big drive and a big touchdown, what did Jalen Hurts do? We all remember that juke run that he did. But he drove the team down a couple of times to solidify that win. Even with a couple of losses, he took over the game. You talk about the game I recall vividly against the LA Chargers, where he brought those guys back to tie the game, but they left too much time, and the defense didn't stop them, and the Chargers ended up winning a close game. So he has had flashes of doing that, and I keep hearing people these last couple of weeks, and they're saying, oh yeah, they see a Patrick Mahomes, they see a Josh Allen, they see a Joe Burrow, and I think it's dangerous to get caught up in that moment with these playoffs, because if you look at the Eagles as a whole, as an organization, they still have a long way to go, and that's beyond the quarterback as well. I mean, yes, do we want to see Jalen improve? Do we want to see him take that next level after being a first-year starter? Keep that in mind too. But these teams have holes, and when Tampa Bay exposed the Eagles in that playoff game, it wasn't just Jalen Hurts. You gotta remember, Tom Brady, being the 44-year-old he is, being the GOAT that he is, he marched right down the field on 3 consecutive drives, and they scored on every play. So you can't have that if you're going to be a winning team in the playoffs, no matter what the offense does. Again, this is not to exclude the criticism for Hurts. It was his first playoff game. He got rattled a little bit for the first time. But again, you had to have some forbearance. You had to have some patience and let him evolve. Look at most of the great quarterbacks that we've seen over time, and look at their first playoff games. You just pick and choose. Excluding this year, we see Joe Burrow, and so yeah, that's an anomaly right there. It
Yes.
doesn't always happen. And this is the extreme, but one thing comes to mind. I'm not saying he's going to be Peyton Manning or anywhere near him, but Peyton Manning lost his first playoff game 41-0. but nobody had any inklings that he wasn't going to be a guy, or he wasn't going to be a franchise quarterback. And again, that's not to say that Jalen will be a franchise quarterback, but he definitely deserves the patience, has earned the patience and the forbearance to see him at least next year and go beyond. And again, it's dangerous to kind of jump the gun and say, oh, yeah, we got to get this quarterback. We got to get that quarterback. Number one, it's going to cost you a lot.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yep.
the Eagles they put themselves in a unique position this offseason with 3 first-round draft picks. And with all the other glaring holes that we see on this team, it would be to their advantage to try to fill some of those holes, and not necessarily for need, but just getting the best player possible at those picks. I do believe that they'll probably move up to take a couple of those picks and maybe try to move up in the top 10. But they're in a position where they just need to get the best player available and do that multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with a lot of what you were saying there, on pretty much everything you were saying there. So Barrett Brooks comes to mind. Barrett Brooks' comments a couple weeks ago. It set social media on fire. Talk radio, of course. He said that at this point in his career, Jalen is actually better than Donovan McNabb. And I think, when you read that at a glance, my thought is that the people who really took to trying to dunk on him for that, or his point was not that Jalen Hurts is better than McNabb,
Correct,
or is going to be better than McNabb. It's saying at this time, at this moment, he's better. I think it's arguable. What are your thoughts on what Barrett said and the reaction to it?
Oh yeah, I did listen to what he said, and he broke a lot of things down. And again, this is a guy that's been in the trenches. This is a guy that has played with a Donovan McNabb. He's played with a Ben Roethlisberger, won a Super Bowl in Pittsburgh. So he is he's not just some jock who's made the transition and talking football and just being a talking head. Barrett Brooks, he's very articulate in what he breaks down. When you see him in the post game shows, or we just saw what he was explaining, within this past couple of weeks. And again, context is key. When you say, okay, when you mention another player, you have to be smart enough in your mind to say, okay, we're not saying that he is Donovan. He's not saying he is Donovan McNabb or he's better than Donovan McNabb. They're just putting it in the context of where Donovan McNabb started as opposed to where Jalen Hurts started. And, that's very comparable to many other quarterbacks. I mean, you have to be, when you're analyzing these things, you have to be a bit of a student of the game. In my opinion, being a little more than a fan, just educate yourself. Look back at the history in the NFL. Playing quarterback is not easy, and not everybody gets it. And another thing that has been going around, the soundbite of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tampa Bay defensive staff, I think it's Kevin Ross, who was, I think, the defensive backs coach.
He can't read.
He can't read. That's just going viral. I mean, number one, coaches say all kind of stuff on the sidelines to motivate their players. Right. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We've seen all types of sound bites on NFL films and saying, "Oh yeah, this guy ain't crap." I've heard coaches say Tom Brady ain't crap to motivate their players and everything. It just happened to come to fruition. And again, it was his first playoff game. Not every quarterback wins their first playoff game, and we have to keep that in mind. And for some apparent reason, because Jalen Hurts is a second-round pick, because he's not making a whole lot of money, he seems to be some expendable piece.
Right.
Right. And that's just not fair, and that's just not
he's
looking at it
objectively. For his attributes. It's like it's a positive. Why? Because he got the team to the playoffs to play the Super Bowl champs. They get beat. So is he worse off? So he should have gone 8-9, tanked it, lost another game.
What would happen had he gone 8-9, or had he been 4-13 like the team was the previous year? I mean, what do you want to do? It's almost like you're darned if you do, darned if you don't. And again, give the team credit, give Sirianni credit for getting to 9-8. Yes, we knew this. We knew what the schedule was before it began. We knew that. Right. But they persevered. They overachieved. I mean, most of these experts that a lot of us listen to, they didn't have the Eagles winning more than 6 games, and they well didn't surpass that. And you look around and everything, and I know we're Philadelphia, we're a very provincial town. And you look around at other teams, they would have loved to have been in the Eagles' position,
Right.
considering.
Right. Right. And you look back on the schedule, it was murderer's row, especially early. I mean, and then the teams who are kind of middling teams, you got to play the Chargers. We played the Chargers when the Chargers were very hot. In retrospect, now we played the 49ers. I was there. We dominated that game except for the scoreboard. And now they're in the NFC Championship. I think Philadelphia fans are just so finicky and so I need it right now, and they really don't trust the process.
No, not at all. Again, there's no patience, there's no forbearance. I mean, in some instances, if a team comes out and tells you, like the Sixers, and say, hey, we're tanking and everything, okay, you really don't have a choice. But, you just got to take things in stride. And, it's one thing to live in a moment, but you can't die in a moment as you're living in it, if that makes sense.
So jump into it, since we started talking a little basketball. What do you think in terms of, you've used this word forbearance as a good way of thinking about it? Do you think that the Sixers should be patient and wait till the offseason to maybe do something with Simmons, continue to wait, try to keep him, or should they do something right here at the break?
Oh, this is tricky. It's a slippery slope, depending on what your opinion is. Waited out as opposed to being traded. It's really tough. Just looking at it from a fan standpoint and from an organizational standpoint, I just think that you just need to make the trade. I understand you just don't want to make a trade to just make a trade, so to speak. But I just think if the Sixers want to just take that next step and try to do something in the playoffs. And again, I believe no matter what trade they make, maybe short of Harden, what trade they make, they're not a championship team because they just don't have enough pieces. And it's probably going to take a couple seasons for them to get enough pieces. And I know folks are saying that, okay, we may waste, the big guy and all. I don't necessarily believe that. But I just think that, just make the trade. Ben doesn't want to be here. The fans don't want him to be here either. So just make the trade and just see what you can get and not try to mortgage the future while doing it.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern, I do appreciate Morey, wherever you fall, wherever somebody falls, whoever's listening, you can't fault Morey. I think he made the right call. I was for what he has done is, all right, at least we're going to play this. We're going to play some games this year, and you're going to sit out. We'll figure out the compensation, but I'm not going to trade. Like, if you would have traded him in the offseason, that's when his value is at the lowest, and then no teams are desperate. Now you get closer to the break, maybe you'll get equal compensation. You never actually, I'm sorry to say that, because you're never actually going to get fair market value for Ben Simmons. That's another aspect to these people, like, get him out of town, just do it. We don't want to sell him for a bag of peanuts. Like, we should at least get something that we can at least take back to the city and say, okay, well, we're at least going to make it to the second round with this team. This team right here, I love how they're playing. Embiid's on an MVP kind of tear. I don't think they're a second round team right now. And so I think that's the goal of any trade. We shouldn't trade just to basically stay where we are now.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. I kind of believe that Ben Simmons' best value probably would have been in the offseason, because even after that June game where he passed, that game 7 where he passed up the layup and everything, there was a lot of vitriol with that. But that was within Philadelphia, not necessarily within the NBA, in my opinion. And I think they could have pull something off where they would have gotten more value sometime during the summer or before the season, other than now. And I just believe that the longer this lingers on, the worse off it will be for the Sixers. Unless someone like a Brooklyn will say, we're hearing these Harden rumors, but we're not hearing anything from the Brooklyn side,
no.
which is just as important.
Right.
If things leaked out about how Brooklyn feels, how they want to go all in, there's still a lot of question marks with them. Can When are they going to get Kevin Durant back? When are the restrictions going to be lifted for Kyrie Irving to play home games? We still have yet to see those big three together. And I think, we can't jump the gun as far as saying, okay, Harden's going to come here. Maybe he does want to come to Philadelphia eventually. Maybe he doesn't. But until we see those three guys on the court together, we'll get a better sense of, how is Harden going to work in Brooklyn, and therefore, how would it look elsewhere if they don't make it to the championship.
And it's not a done deal. That also another thing about a Harden trade is he's on the other side of his peak. I'm not saying that he's not an all-star or even close to a superstar player, but how long are you going to get that? Or maybe
correct.
You're really saying we got
he's not a spring chicken. Still a great player, but he's not a spring chicken either.
Right.
So what is your window? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? You get Harden and they don't win, then what happens? What happens after that? Once he gets here, it's all in. It's championship or nothing. Not even getting to the finals.
Right.
If you pull off the Harden trade, they have to win.
And I think you would probably to get them in season, you probably have to throw Tobias in as well. Like you have to. There's going to need to be, because they have high expectations as well. They're not going to just
correct
give you James Harden.
Correct. And do they want Ben Simmons? That's another thing that we don't know. There's so many question marks with this trade. So, with potential trades, I should say. And with all these rumors going around, it always takes two to tango. And it may even take a third, because as you know, Matt, NBA trades can be complicated. And I always thought from the beginning that Sixers may have to get a third party in to pull any Ben Simmons trade off.
Yeah. I'm not in a rush. The Sixers are going to make the playoffs. They probably play well in the first round, really, regardless. I mean, you get a Tyrese Halliburton or Anthony Simmons, you're still going to get gunned down by Brooklyn in a 7-game series. You make it to the finals. If you ever make it to the finals with that kind of team, you're definitely getting swept by the Warriors. So it's not. You got to look at this more than the. This is hard for Philadelphia fans, but delay some gratification, because it's not really going to be gratification. Don't rush to get the same result.
Right. And that's what Morey's been adamant when, during his interviews. And, and I get that in a sense. I'm not the biggest Daryl Morey fan, by the way. But because, when we look back at it, what is his track record other than just making just making certain trades? He has not won anything as an executive.
No.
You have to go back to his Boston days where he really wasn't making any basketball decisions for the last time, he's been on a championship team. So that's something to keep in mind as well. When they hired Daryl Morey, it's like, okay, I guess they're, want to make some moves here and there. But, what has he done overall to have this reputation as this great executive? I know he's a good executive, but where's his greatness? So
I definitely take Howie. Over Daryl Morey.
Well, we know Howie will, he'll probably trade his grandmother if he knows he can get up in the draft, get in the top 10 or something. So
yeah. And you gotta kind of love it, because he lay it on the line for the city. He's trying to win.
Deal. Yes, and I know this is all topic and everything, but I strongly believe that with the Eagles and their 3 first-round picks, that there's no way they're going to keep all 3. I think they're going to probably try to move 1 or 2 to get in that top 10.
Because it's Howie.
Exactly. There you go, man. He loves the wheel and deal. He can't help himself, man.
I've been trying to tell people talk about maybe we'll trade back. Somebody else, not Howie. Howie wants to win, and he already got this team to the playoffs last year. Yeah. Yep. It's going down.
He'll try to do something to maneuver and try and get in the top 10. I just feel it.
Do you think you talk about how he would trade his grandmother, which is hilarious and not too far from the truth?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We know that's him. That's him. You listen, we can get on him with free agents. We can get on him with who he actually drafts. But he's one of the best at draft capital, no doubt about it.
So you think he tries to get some draft capital for Fletcher Cox, or is Fletcher on the team next year?
Well, I think this one is kind of tough because it all depends what his cap number is. And I think last time I looked it up, he has a pretty big cap number. So what are the Eagles are going to be on the books with? And I know he's not the player he once was. I know he complained about the scheme during the season. It might depend if Gannon is going or not. Who knows if he gets a head coaching job. But also, even if you do move him, you're going to have to replace him. I do like Milton Williams, the interior lineman that they drafted last year. That's looking to be a pretty good pick. He's showing
Yep.
some promise.
Yep.
And if you look at the stat sheet, I think he might have just as many sacks as any of the other interior linemen. He may have even more than Fletcher Cox, I believe. But
Not as many as Hargrave. I don't think Hargrave, but I think
okay,
Fletcher
yes,
Cox.
Hargrave, yes,
Yes.
but yes. So he is he an adequate replacement for a Fletcher Cox? Can you put him alongside a Hargrave for him to make that next step? But I think it just all depends on what type of cap hit you're going to get, and
It's a
again,
big
the
cap.
capital.
Yeah, for what if it's just, do you want to keep Fletcher Cox? Yes. If Fletcher Cox is going to play at a reasonable contract, yes, you keep Fletcher in midnight green forever. But
You're right, Mike. That's another possibility. Does Howie go to Fletcher Cox's agent and say, "Hey, let's restructure and move some money here, move some money
we got
there"?
to,
Yeah,
or you got to go.
that's a good point. That's actually that's a good point, and actually a good possibility. I think now.
Or he's got to go. Honestly,
Yeah.
he's somebody who should be in consideration for a jersey retirement one day for the Eagles. But as of right now, what he's going to provide, he's not what it is, that cap number. And maybe it's Gannon's fault. Maybe a new defensive coordinator would change the world for him, and he'd be back to being the Fletcher that we saw in that Saint. I think the most dominant I've seen him was that Saints playoff game where Alshon dropped the pass. Fletcher was absolutely dominant, had to go out during that game with injury, came back, dominated, just bulldozing guys. I want to see that Fletcher. I don't know if he's there anymore.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see that Fletcher Cox.
Yeah.
But if you just see him enough to where, he'll cause some trouble, command some double teams, and, open up things for other guys like a Hargrave, like a Brandon Graham, if he comes back healthy. So, those are things that to keep in mind. And also, too, the Eagles are going to have a lot of cap space this past year. So they can certainly move some money around if they need to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you think there's a lot of rumblings about the immunized Aaron Rodgers and what he's going to be doing in this offseason. Do you think, first off with that, do you think that these rumblings of retirement or moving, is that him trying to get some leverage on the team, or do you think he's legitimately thinking about either retiring or he does want to go somewhere with 1 year left on the deal?
Well, I think he already had the leverage on the team just going into the season, and I think there's no doubt that he's going to move on after this year. I don't know what his contract situation is. It looks like most likely, it'll have to be some type of trade, some type of agreement for a trade, and they'll probably work with his agent to try to facilitate a trade. I believe Green Bay thinks that it's time as well. Not so much that they want to get rid of him per se, but I think they know it's time that Aaron Rodgers probably wants to move on and try something else. And with his offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett being hired in Denver, that's a big possibility, and I can see that happening. And Denver's looking for a quarterback, no question, because he can't seem to draft one and be successful with one. Last time, they were really good, it was with Peyton Manning. So
they didn't draft him.
Right, and that seems to be their philosophy. And I know the team is going to be up for sale soon, but that's their philosophy. And them going out to acquire Aaron Rodgers seems to make sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes them the only drawback to that whole thing is that Aaron is deciding basically I got to play I'm going to the AFC West, and I'm playing Patrick Mahomes twice a year. I'm playing Patrick Mahomes twice a year. I'm playing Josh Allen twice a year, or I'm sorry, Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert, yes,
twice a year. He's not so worried about Derek Carr, but that's 4 tough games a season. I'm sure he thinks that he's the guy, because he kind of is, but that's not, moving to the old AFC East that the Patriots played in. You're not going to get, a bunch of free wins. So that's some exciting football if that happens.
Oh yeah, it will be, and I don't think that's any concern of his. Of course, he's a competitor. He's one of the, no matter what you think of him as far
Yep.
as the COVID
Yep.
situation. He's still a great player. We all
Yes.
know that and acknowledge that.
Yep.
And I think he's going to be, game on when he gets to Denver, and I'm sure those fans are going to embrace him as well.
So you is it a foregone conclusion to Denver, or just most likely in your mind?
I would say most likely. We have to see what happens, when free agency starts and all of those things. But yeah, I think it's more than likely. I would say it's probably a 75% chance he ends up like somewhere like Denver.
He's going to get a lot out of Jerry Jeudy. The anticipatory, very catchable football that he throws is going to unlock. We haven't seen Jerry Jeudy is. I don't think he's as good as CeeDee Lamb, but he's got that similar potential. And I don't think the general football fan, passerby football fan really knows how good Jerry Jeudy is. They've already got Jerry Jeudy. If they're going to get Aaron Rodgers, Devontae. Wherever Aaron Rodgers goes, Devontae is at least going to strongly consider.
Well, he's a free agent,
yes.
So that could be a possibility too. Because what will Denver want in return? Do they have to send a Jeudy to Green Bay, knowing that Devontae Adams is most likely going to leave? Because Green Bay doesn't sign a lot of free agents, being a publicly owned entity. So that's a possibility, and Denver has to get something out of the deal too. So, I mean, Green Bay has to get something out of the deal too. So that might have to be one of the sacrifices.
Wow. Yeah, that would hurt, but I think you would feel okay. You get Aaron Rodgers. I think you would survive. I think you would sleep all right with that.
Right, right. he gives you a great chance to win. And again, you got to have somebody in a division like you just mentioned, the AFC West. You have to have somebody to go, first of all, toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes and potentially a Justin Herbert.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking of Aaron Rodgers, who you expect to never play in Lambeau as a home player again, who do you hope you never see playing in Lincoln Financial Field as a Philadelphia Eagle home teamer ever again?
Well, hoping to never see again. That's a little harsh for me. But of course, the person that comes to mind is Jalen Reagor, and I just think he just needs a change of scenery for
yes.
Every reason that you can think of.
Yes.
And I just thought when they selected him in the first round, I just thought that it was a mistake. Even if you don't get Justin Jefferson, I mean,
yes.
Jalen Reagor was one of the last guys I thought of that they should pick.
It was a reach.
You're right. They didn't get CeeDee Lamb, of course, because Dallas took him away. They didn't get Jefferson. And, who's the other receiver that went later in the draft? Later in the first round, a few picks later. That's another guy that they could have gotten, and it wouldn't have been as much of a reach.
Are we talking about Jeudy?
Gosh. Is it Jeudy? I believe we'll have to look it up and see.
Okay. We'll fact check it later.
Right. Yeah, we'll fact check that. Thank you, man. But anyway, just going back to Reagor, it's just everything about it. I don't know if it's just bad karma, bad omen.
Yep.
He just can't seem to do anything right. I mean,
right.
You can't catch the ball, you can't get involved, you're dropping balls. Listen, he can't even, return kickoffs correctly or return punts correctly. If you're not doing everything you can as a first round pick, as a starter, at least contribute to the team in some other kind of way. And he, for whatever reason, he has not been able to do that. So at this point, you need a change of scenery. And I know it's a first round pick. the Eagles, Howie Roseman, they have to justify that in some kind of way. But the more they try to justify it, the more embarrassing it looks.
It's very much like Nelson Aguilar all over again. I actually think I agree with you completely. I think a change of scenery. I think he's going to end up being better than Aguilar in his second. I think he has Deebo Samuel-ish potential, but he just can't get right.
No,
I think it's totally a mental thing.
Yeah, it's a mental thing, and well, as far as Aguilar is concerned, his last couple years here were, very
Yes,
forgettable. But I mean, Nelson Aguilar was a big contributor to that Super Bowl
yes,
team. The
yes.
Eagles don't win the Super Bowl
No.
without some of Nelson Aguilar's big catches, especially during the season. He was quite a contributor during the Super Bowl, during the actual Super Bowl, and a couple of those playoff games. So we have to not have a short memory as far as
Yep.
Aguilar is concerned. I know the last 2 years were rough, but you look back, did he live up to a first round pick? Absolutely not. But he was a contributor, and that's all you could hope for with Jalen Reagor. If he remains here, hopefully he's not. I don't know what the situation is for the Eagles to get rid of him, but he certainly needs a change of scenery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I brought up earlier Joel Embiid for MVP. What are your thoughts on that? And who else are you putting into that conversation if you are putting Joel in there?
For me, it's a one-man race, and it just all depends if Joel can stay healthy or not. I mean, we as Philadelphians, we advocated, we were lobbying for Joel Embiid to be the MVP last year, and I just think it was just a matter of him just missing too many games. And if he can just stay healthy, if he can just stay on the court, which I think is miraculous right now, by the way, as we're getting close to the All-Star break. But I mean, he's playing monumental basketball and in many ways historical basketball. And when you look at the landscape of the NBA right now with this roster, you take away a Joel Embiid, what are the Philadelphia 76ers?
Ooh, they're gonna be
So
worse
you
than
got
the Hinkie team. The
right.
process.
You gotta ask that question, or maybe even close to it. And some of the other candidates that you look around the league, whoever you choose, you take those guys away, you still may have a formidable team. You still may have a playoff team, but you take Joel Embiid away, especially without a Ben Simmons, and you don't know who's going to be in and out. You have too many streaky guys on this roster, with a Tobias Harris, with a Seth Curry. Some of the injuries is concerned. Maxey is, a promising good player, but he still has a way to go as far as maturity is concerned. You take Embiid away, what do you have in this town?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I saw a stat go out like the last 4 games before he dropped 26 the last against the Lakers, but those 4 games
Yes.
prior, they were comparing that to Wilt Chamberlain. And anytime you're getting compared to Wilt Chamberlain, like not like per 26 minutes or anything like that, literally straight up stat for stat, you're being compared to Wilt Chamberlain, you're doing something. You're playing all-time great basketball.
Absolutely. And that's what we asked for. That's what we were looking for when Embiid was selected, several years ago. Of course, it was rough through the process and getting him healthy and seeing him on the court. There was a time where I thought he wouldn't see the court and thought, might have been a wasted pick. And, we have another Greg Oden on our hands. But I mean,
Man.
he's done everything that we could ever ask for a player of his caliber and his talent. He's great off the court. He's great in the community. He's not. I wish he was on Twitter a little more, but because I enjoyed that. But that lets you know that he's totally focused on
Yes,
being the best player that he can be. And we're in for a real treat watching
absolutely.
him, and hopefully an MVP season. And again, he has. If I had a vote, I mean, he should be a unanimous decision if he stays on the court for the rest of this season for the most part.
He's got, you could see some of it last year. He was starting to step
Yes,
into where he is now. When he
yes,
steps on the floor every night, you know that he thinks and is determined to prove that he's the best player on the floor, period. No matter who they're playing, he's saying, I got to play at that level.
Yeah, and also picking up the slack, understanding the obvious, which Ben Simmons is not on the court. He's not with the team, and he may have taken a personal burden to say, "Hey, I have to step it up even more. I have to be that superstar. I have to flat out be the man, no matter what."
Absolutely, absolutely. So we got another, I think will be exciting weekend of football. We got the championship weekend or championship Sunday. Cincinnati goes to Kansas City. This is a replay of I think week 17 game that was a barn burner. Who do you think wins that game? And if you have a score, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, yeah. So I think this is going to be a pretty good game. A lot of people think that Kansas City is just going to blow out Cincinnati because of Cincinnati's lack of an offensive line. But I do think, we're going to see a similar game to what we saw in the season. I don't know if it'll be as much of a shootout, but Cincinnati can go toe-to-toe with Kansas City. Kansas City has to play some defense in this game, or they're going to be in some trouble. And Cincinnati has a more potent offense than Buffalo has, and you see that went down to the wire, and Kansas City had to, come back and forth. Anytime, Cincinnati has all the weapons. They have Jamar Chase. They have their two tight ends and Higgins. And oh gosh, what's the other guy's name?
Uzoma.
Yeah. Yes. And so they have those two tight ends. They have Joe Mixon coming out of the backfield. So as we saw during the season, they're more than capable of going toe to toe with Kansas. They nearly blew them out.
Yes.
But it is going to be tough in that environment at Arrowhead because it's just so loud there that you can't hear yourself think most of the times. And we all know what Kansas City brings with Mahomes, with Hill, with Kelsey, Hardman, those guys. They're going to bring it. Cincinnati just has to, try to curb them as much as they can. But again, they can score with Kansas City. I think the key to this game is actually Kansas City's defense and not so much what Cincinnati does. Because if they allow Chase to get off, and he's been doing that all season. If they allow Burrow those windows to get to those tight ends and all, it's going to be a tough game for KC. But I give the Chiefs an edge, and I'll say, let's see, I'll give it a 34-31 game. Kansas City wins it.
Wow.
It could come down to a field goal. I know we would love to see that again. But I just think KC ekes it out 34-31 because I really do think that Cincinnati can still score on them.
I have it a little further, but in the same row, I think Kansas City's going to win. I think it's going to be 38-28. But 30, I would love to see 30. I prefer your score.
Yes. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a blowout as people anticipate because again, Cincinnati's offense can be just as potent as Kansas City's.
Yes. And I don't know how people don't see that. They straight up, whatever Spagnuolo was dialing up in that week 17 game, if he go burn that, like Will Smith said in Bad Boys, put it in the box and throw it in the ocean because they were trying to one-on-one. It was like 3rd and 15 or something, and they were one-on-one press man coverage on Jamar Chase. There's nobody on Kansas City that should be one-on-one press man against Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is already a top.
Well, you just look at how Buffalo was able to move the ball against KC's defense last week. You look at what Diggs and what Davis was able to do against the Chiefs defense. I mean, would you compare Davis and Diggs as comparable to Jamar Chase and Higgins and all those guys? That's similar talent right there. So why can't Cincinnati not move the ball? And again, Kansas City, do they have a good defensive line? They do, but it's not a caliber of a Tennessee. I don't see Burrow getting sacked nine half the times that he was sacked last week.
Yeah, and Buffalo doesn't have a Joe Mixon. That's something that Kansas City didn't really have to worry about. Joe Mixon can kill you on the ground and through the air. So
right. They can get it to him in the backfield too. So I anticipate an exciting game. and it's not going to be a gimme as many people think it'll be for the Chiefs.
And Joe Burrow is another. Speaking of how Joel Embiid steps into the room, he says, "I'm that guy." Joe Burrow has that. Joe Burrow already is like, I don't care. You know, we're coming to. He's probably going to be talking crazy during the game. You know,
Yes.
Chris Jones, get close to him. You can't touch me.
I mean, he's kind of like, as far as attitude is concerned, he's kind of like a young Aaron Rodgers. So, you know, not so much a chip on his shoulder, but as far as that confidence is concerned, you know, he steps on that field and always feels like he belongs, and he does.
Absolutely. Obviously, he belongs because he's here once again. Mr. Garoppolo has made another conference championship game.
We just can't get rid of Jimmy, can we?
I mean, the guy's been to more conference championships in recent memory than Aaron Rodgers, which is amazing.
Right.
Because Rodgers was in this
and knocked out Aaron Rodgers twice already. So
it's just crazy.
It's not pretty. It's not luxurious. But Jimmy G, he finds a way to win. And, you know, sometimes you just have to measure a quarterback as, okay, does he win? And they drafted Trey Lance. You know, I don't know what's going to happen after this year. You know, what are they going to do with Trey Lance? So obviously he's his future. Did they have him sit another year and everything? But hey, we know Jimmy Garoppolo didn't do anything in, you know, the Green Bay game last year. But, you know, he has a great supporting cast to where, you know, even if he doesn't play well, they still win. It's pretty fascinating when you think about it.
He's clutch. I'm not sure. I think he's good. Like, he's at least average. And at moments he makes some throws, like he didn't complete a pass all the way through, and then his first completion was on the sideline to Kittle.
He's efficient.
And it was like the best throw of the day.
He's efficient. Sometimes when you have a good supporting cast around you, all you have to do is just be efficient. And that, you know, when you look back at last week's game, Cincinnati and Tennessee, that's all Tennessee was trying to ask of Ryan Tannehill, and he just could not get it done. So, you know, that's the contrast there. That's the big difference. And, you know, they'll probably be looking for a quarterback after this season. But you know, with this game with San Francisco and the LA Rams, again, a lot of people think the Rams are going to run away with this. What's the track record? Right. San Francisco swept them during the season and sweep them handily. Right. And, you know, that's something to keep in mind. Is it hard to beat a team 3 times in one season? Yes, it is. But if there's ever a team who's capable and ready to do so, it's the San Francisco 49ers, because they went in the trenches. They have Samuel. They still have great Kittle. They have good receivers that make plays and don't lose the game for you. They don't make mistakes. And on defense, they get after you. They get after you with that front 7, and they have a secondary that plays well also. So all the pressures on the LA Rams to win this game. Absolutely. I know they're looking at being the home team with the Super Bowl, being in Southern California this year, but all the pressures on the Rams, and you see they won by the skin of their teeth against Tampa Bay. They can't make those. They can't make those type of mistakes against San Francisco, and that's another thing the 49ers do. They capitalize off of your mistakes.
The 49ers aren't trying to beat you with any kind of gimmick. They're coming to wherever you are, or you're coming to San Fran. You know, it's smash mouth football. You know, it's going to be a bunch of exotic runs with Deebo Samuel and, you know, screen passes.
Ayuk. Yeah, they have Ayuk as well. So, you know, they go both ways with those wide receiver screens, those reverses, and everything. You know what's coming, but you can't stop it because they have that talent. And again, in defense, they get after you. So I'm going to answer your question, Matt. I'm going to take San Francisco for the upset again. I think they do it a third time.
I'm absolutely with you. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be a lot lower scoring than people think. I think we'll get to late third quarter, and it'll be like 14-13 Rams. But that pressure, that building's going to collapse in on them because you got that pressure. Do you guys want to have the Super Bowl? Odell's got immense pressure on him to get to his first Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford, pretenders syndrome. And so that pressure is going to come in on them, and it's also going to collide with the fact that San Fran is just a much more physically dominating team than them. And I think Jimmy G finds a way to I don't know if it's going to be a touchdown. I don't know if he's going to fumble it into the end zone or
right.
hit off his guy's helmet and somebody else catches it. The guy just wins football games. I mean,
yeah, he has the best of luck, man. And and even if you just look at his overall record as a starter in the NFL, it's tremendous.
Amazing.
I mean, most teams, most quarterbacks would love to have the record that Jimmy Garoppolo has. It's not only over 500, it's well over 500. And it's just hard to fathom because he's just not the flashy quarterback that we're used to seeing. And, someone that you can ride with and will win a game for you. But all he does is just win. And you also made a good point, Matt, that there's a lot of pressure on Matthew Stafford. He has not gone this far in the playoffs as of yet. I mean, he just won his first career playoff game last week. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had only been to the playoffs one other time.
Yep.
And he almost fumbled the bag last week. As good as they were, as dominating as they were for most of that game, he almost fumbled the bag, but he got it done with those 2 clutch passes on that last drive to win it at the end. But, can he do it again? And
that was a blown coverage.
Right. Yeah, it was a blown coverage. You're right. Yeah. I said on Twitter that maybe Tebow could have made that pass, maybe not, but it was definitely blown coverage.
How do you, of all people in that moment, how does Cooper Kupp get open?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, something happened there. It's inexplicable, but they'll Matthew Stafford out. Yeah, he made the play, and they're here. But again, there's so much riding with me. And again, you look at the trade, how they got to the Super Bowl with a Jared Goff, and if Matthew Stafford does not do this, was the trade worth it? That's what they're going to be asking in Los Angeles and throughout the NFL. If they don't get it done this weekend against the 49ers, was a trade even worth it?
My football GM head is what made my picks, but I'm really hoping that we get a Kansas City versus LA Rams because of that 2018 Monday Night Football game that they played. That was so exciting.
Yeah, the shootout at the Coliseum, right? Yeah, that's what everybody's hoping for, and for sure, that's what the NFL is hoping for. Even though San Francisco was one of the glamour franchises of the league, but everything has to fall into place. You know what I mean? The stars aligning with the Super Bowl being in LA. Why not have the home team for a second year in a row? So I'm sure that's what everybody wants to see. Absolutely. And, to get the most for their money. So, advertising and all that type of stuff. So
if Jimmy G makes it to the Super Bowl, he's untouchable. I mean, you can't be supplanted. You can't take that. That's his job if he makes it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And also he potentially gets a second shot at beating the Chiefs again. So again, that might be another interesting game where we may not think it may not be the outcome that we might anticipate.
The guy's a winner. Absolutely. Well, OJ, I really appreciate you coming on. I went a little longer because it was such a lively, interesting conversation. Tell the people where we can follow along and show you some support, man.
Well, thanks so much, Matt, for having me. Once again, it was fun as well. Very enjoyable. Love what you're doing right here. So you can catch me on Twitter as always at OJ Philly, and you can catch my work just going to Philly Tribune. Well, I'm sorry, at the Philadelphia Tribune, and you can just go to phillytrib.com, and you can also follow them on Twitter at Philly Trib.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I'll continue following, but all y'all listening, definitely go show OJ some love. Very, very astute analyst and all things Philly. Got the Ogons kind of accent. I love the Mount Airy kind of. That's what it sounds like.
I'm actually from West Philly, but I did spend some time uptown. So
okay,
but I'm actually originally from West Philly, so
okay,
all around, and just being in journalism as long as I can. You know, I know all the neighborhood accents and everything. So, and it's funny you say that because my daughter doesn't really have an accent yet. She's 16,
okay.
And you know, whenever she hears me speak, you know, she looks at me like I have 3 heads.
I love it. It makes me feel back at home. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Definitely would love to have you back. Take care, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.